First, let's look at where we are up to in regards to coronavirus. Australia now has about 3,809 known cases. The Prime Minister said today that the early signs are that the curve is flattening thanks to the measures taken so far.
This time last week, the rate of increase on cases was up around 25 to 30% a day. That rate now, over the last few days, has fallen to about 13 to 15%.
And here's how Australia's case trajectory compares with other countries around the world, according to the Johns Hopkins University. You can still see that our path is similar to the other countries, to other European countries who are facing a dire situation, although, of course, there has been an improvement in our infection rate, according to the Prime Minister today. The question now needs to be asked: why did our government, state and federal, let infected people into our country via planes and cruise ships? And this is something that all of you have been asking this week. People say the virus doesn't have a passport, but actually it does. The Prime Minister pointed out today that 2/3 of the coronavirus cases in Australia came from overseas, meaning people who got the virus overseas and brought it back home.
It is still overwhelmingly the case that the cases are imported cases. The figures I have, I was at my briefing this morning, that's at 6:30 this morning, that the Commonwealth has, is there was 3,809 cases, and that number is always moving in the course of the day, as you know, but 2,562 of those cases were imported from overseas.
9 weeks ago, Australia was at the forefront of action to stop the spread of the virus, and Morrison banned flights from China. But after this early move, the government became gun-shy, possibly because of the pushback from the tertiary education and tourism sectors, who were worried about their income streams. Now, just over a week ago, Morrison finally moved to ban entry into our country from non-Australian citizens. When he did this, Alan Jones interviewed him on his radio show and asked him an important question: whether he should have closed our borders to tourists much earlier.
You think perhaps in hindsight you should have done that earlier?
No, and we were acting on advice on those things too, Alan. These are always balanced decisions, and we were able to slow the virus as a start and spread in Australia through these early periods.
Now, when he mentioned balanced decisions, he was of course referring to the impact on the economy. But imagine if Morrison had closed our borders much, much earlier. In terms of the economic impact, of course the aviation and tourism sectors and education sector would have been savaged, and they have been now. But much of our local economy could possibly still be operating because we'd have significantly fewer cases. It's unlikely we'd require such extensive shutdowns. And it's not just arrivals from air. More than 200 cases have come from cruise ships in an unforgivable failure of policy where New South Wales Health and the New South Wales Government conducted no health checks, allowing sick passengers to get off the ships and just infect the rest of Australia. Channel 7 this week had extraordinary footage of the captain of a coronavirus-infected cruise ship, the Ovation of the Seas, telling everyone on board that they don't need to self-isolate or quarantine. When he said it, people were cheering. It now turns out that at least 31 of those passengers had coronavirus. It just is sickening. And the New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian's response to all of this? No apology, no accepting responsibility, just trying to shift the blame. The overall question that needs to be asked is, why did we choose to allow this virus to enter Australia so easily? We are an island nation. We don't have porous borders like Europe. We could have closed our borders earlier than we have done before community transmission was rife. This would have saved many lives. Now we are in this situation. The question is, how do we deal with it and how extensive the shutdowns should be? And that is that's the discussion that's happening right now as we speak at the National Cabinet. And as you know, New South Wales and Victoria are pushing for much stronger shutdowns. These drastic actions will see millions of Australians lose their jobs with dramatic social consequences. A rise in poverty, in domestic violence, in mental illness, in suicide. None of this would have been necessary had we closed our borders earlier.